So hello, everyone. I'm Marvin Thomas, Heritage Planning and Policy Advisor with the Ministry of Parks, Culture and Sport. And this is the third and final day of our 2024 webinar series. Welcome back to everyone who took in presentations last week, and greetings to those just joining today. So to begin, I respectfully acknowledge that Regina, where I'm located, is in Treaty 4 territory. These are the traditional lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, the Nakota, Dakota, and Lakota, and home of the Métis. And we make this land acknowledgement in the spirit of reconciliation, and as a reminder that here we are all treaty people. So in today's presentations, we're going to learn about the adaptive reuse of two historic buildings. And we're fortunate to have the developers here to talk about some of the technical and business considerations for updating a historic building to make it serviceable for a contemporary use while still retaining its heritage character. Before introducing our first speaker, I'll just remind everyone to keep your microphones and cameras turned off during the presentations, and I'll ask you to hold your questions until the end of the hour after both presentations have finished. So our first presenter is Jesse Crozier, co-owner of Straight Line Contractors in North Battleford. So the town of North Battleford has an enviable collection of heritage buildings, and among them, its historic post office is a standout and a downtown landmark. But a number of years ago, it was close to abandonment. Canada Post had moved out of the building and was considering relocating out of downtown altogether. So Jesse, I'm really looking forward to hearing how it came about that the post office is again operating out of the building. So I'll turn things over to you.
Thanks, Marvin. Happy to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm kind of new to Teams. I'm going to do my best here. Bear with me if I have any technical difficulties. I'm going to put us all on share so I can show you some pictures, and we'll just go through things. I'll give you a summary, kind of the history of the building and kind of how we came to purchase it and the work we did to rehabilitate it. And now that it's back in the community, how it's kind of affected everybody, and it's a fixture of the community, and it's really nice to see that it's still in use. I'm just going to go ahead and turn you on here. There we go. So here's a picture of the post office itself. So it was originally built in 1911. Construction was started. And they continued construction for the 2 years following. It was opened in 1913. So the clock was installed the following year. And originally, in addition to postal services, the building is also Canada Customs, Dominion Lands, Teachers Alliance, and Department of Indian Affairs. And that kind of went through till the 50s, and then it kind of just went back to being strictly a post office. So a little bit about our company. We're mostly commercial work. We do asbestos and mold. We do lots of renovations. Historical buildings are one of our specialties. We've been in town here now for going on 20 years. So we've done lots of projects like this. We've got experience with it. And the reason we got into the asbestos part of it is when you work in these old buildings, you often run into asbestos. So it's good to have guys that are trained and team members that understand what kind of risks we're dealing with when we do that kind of work. So it's all part of the restoration part of it as well. Back here. So originally it was about 2017 when the building was purchased, and it came up as I guess it was listed originally on MLS. They were looking to sell the building by itself. And what they wanted to do is find somebody to take it over and kind of just buy the building, find a new use for it. So part of the reason that we ended up purchasing it was because they were willing to move back into the building and lease the space again. So because of that, Canada Post would agree to a 10-year lease pending some work that we had to do. So there was quite a bit of stuff that needed to be done before they could move in. And some of those things were, since they weren't planning on using the second and third floor, they only want to lease the second floor, or the first floor in the basement, was to remove the stairwell access, which I'll find you a picture of here. So So we got the old stairs. The old stair access was kind of over around a corner, and there was also a second, third, and fourth floor access as well. So one of the first things we did was cut the stairwell in. So this is the kind of the back operations area. So this is existing floor. This was original floor. We opened it up and all back to code. Opened the floor and installed beams on either side to accommodate the new stairwell. That was quite an involved process. Of course, everything was had to be inspected. It was all done prior to pending pulling a permit. So there's the stairwell reinstalled. So that allows them their access to the basement. We removed the, I guess, second, third, and fourth floor access as well. So all this stuff was painstakingly pulled out of here. All the old balustrade, handrail, all the components. We brought in humidifiers. We let everything sit. And then I had our best carpenters in there, very carefully removing the newels, spindles, balustrade, everything. We've kept all that stuff. We didn't want to throw anything out because, of course, there'll be some use for it in the future. Somebody will want it for something, or I mean, who knows what'll happen 20 years down the road. Maybe put the stairwell back in. So that was another big part of it. When we removed that, we tied everything back in using kind of the old methods that they would have used. I mean, obviously we have laminated veneer lumber beams and stuff like that because everything had to be done to code. But as you can see, it's all keyed in to the existing structure. So we had our masons come in, clean everything out, remove all the grout lines, and then peel back some of the brick to be able to tie the new landings in. So we deleted that stuff, but we tried to do it in a way that was becoming of the age of the building and a way that would mesh in well with what was existing. You can see this is actually original brick we used to go in between the joists. Kept everything as clean as possible. Of course, all this is finished now. You can't see any of it, but it was still very important to us that it be done in a way that kind of mirrored the old world craftsmanship and stuff like that that they used to have to do manually back in the day. So another part was the new stairs to the basement that we cut that hole in, got all that completed. Asbestos abatement obviously was part of it. Find the boilers here. So here you can see these are the original boilers that were installed in 1911, 1912. They were converted from coal to natural gas. This is the boiler all stripped off. So of course that's high risk. This is all just the refuse that came out of this. That's all asbestos containing material. And all of that was done as per OH&S guidelines. So I mean, of course you have a 3-stage decontamination. Here's some pictures of our shower. This was all installed in the basement as part of this quite extensive abatement. It took some time. It was about a 3-week project. And we had about 6 guys working on this one. So that was quite involved as well. And now that it's complete, there's also some flooring and stuff like that. There's now no asbestos containing material in the building whatsoever, which we thought was a good thing. And it was a really good opportunity since they didn't have, employees in the building, no members of the public in the building. It made sense to kind of deal with that stuff then. So we were able to get Canada Post in there. They signed a 10-year lease, which was really excellent. And because of that, it made it financially viable for us to actually do the work. And I mean, once you have a tenant like that, I mean, there's also the second and third floor. Somebody else could definitely move in there at some point, but I mean, it leaves it open and it keeps it in town. So another part of it was, let me just find here the brief. The building envelope all had to be done as well. As you can see, it was pretty tired. So this is all tin batten system. Here's the dormers. Everything was starting to rust. So we brought in a dry ice blasting machine, cleaned all this stuff off, and then fastened all the battens down. And then any of the tin flashings or any of those areas where you've got building envelope tie-in to the exterior of the building from the roof, that was all repaired prior to applying an all metal primer to everything and then painting everything. Let me just find this one here too. So here's the roof once the work was complete. So I mean, it's night and day, and it still looks like this. It's been, it's going on 8 years. So just because of that extra time that was spent stripping it off and buying the right materials, you end up with a nice finished product that's really, you know, becoming of what it used to look like. The eaves as well, these are all integrated into the roof system. So it's tin that's all tied back into the exterior of the building. It was pretty tired also. We stripped everything off right back down to the bare metal, and then went back in with a 2-barrier system. So this all ties in. And then the eaves troughs were all tied back into it again. We kept the original eaves troughs. All the downspouts were actually copper, which was very cool as well. So it was quite a project. It took considerable amount of time, but we were careful at each stage to make sure that we kept everything historically accurate and that we didn't change anything in a way that would take away from that overall feel of the building. Just bring this up here. Some of the other work that was done inside, especially when we did the I guess redo for their retail. These are some of the original columns. So this was all restored as well. There it is with drywall. And that's completed. So that took a lot of time. All of the trim work, especially the ceiling and columns, that's all plaster. So anywhere that needed restoration, we completely restored that, primed everything, cleaned it all up, and then tried to make it, you know, as clean as possible. And I think it shows when you look through the building. All that stuff was retained, and a lot of it, when we originally took the building on, there was a suspended ceiling through most of it. So we removed that and restored everything that way as well. And it was nice because you expose all that old plaster and everything can get fixed, and it can just be brought back to its original shine. I'm trying to find this picture here. So this is part of some of the work that was done to put back in their leasehold. This is all brand new Canada Post code. It's security wall, so there's several layers of protection, just so people can't, if you break through the wall, you can't get into their operations area. There's a lot of specifications that had to be followed to make that happen. So you can see there's wire over everything. It ends up with a coat of layer of plywood over everything as well at the end, and then fire guard drywall on both sides. So that was pretty extensive also. The entire project was very fun and enjoyable for us and the crew. And the first part, before they moved back in, that was about a 6-month process. And then the rest, once we were kind of worked out as far as their drawings and layouts, that was about another 8 months. So there was a lot to do, and it was quite involved. And some of the other stuff here. Here's some pictures of the clock. So this is on the 3rd floor. This is all still functioning. There is some issues with the one east face of the clock. That's a big one. I didn't want to touch any of that. We've had a couple of people look at it. I need to get some parts remachined for that. So this is the original clock works. And then here's the 4th floor. That's the bell and clock face from the back. So everybody was really happy to have this building back in town and back downtown again. They'd moved out to kind of the edge of the highway. And so nobody was really fussy on that. It was an icy couple of trailers and a parking lot. And I think a big reason Canada Post was compelled to move back in was they got a lot of complaints to the ombudsman from people downtown. There's grocery stores downtown that were losing business, and I mean restaurants losing business. So I think that was a big motivator for them to get back into the building. And everyone was just thrilled once they were back. It was a long wait. They were out of there for, I think it was 2.5 years, 3 years before they got back in. And it was a big deal to the town. We felt like our downtown was getting hollowed out due to just the fact that one of the busiest hubs was no longer there. So it was quite a job, but it was a labor of love. Everybody really enjoyed working on it. And it's one of those ones that you get that in your repertoire, and it brought on a lot of other restoration work that we've enjoyed doing as well. Flip around here. So I think it's important, if someone's going to take on a project like this, that they do their due diligence as far as restoration. Everybody needs to know what steps to follow, and everybody needs to make sure any subcontractors on the project are well managed, because stuff can go wrong in a hurry, especially exterior work. Any of that kind of work, it needs to be done in a way that you don't damage the building. I mean, so for the roof part of it, we had probably a month and a half with a 70-foot boom man lift there. There's the potential to create a lot of problems that way. If you have poor operators or poor safety, you're going to have issues. Stuff like that was a consideration, and we made sure to do our due diligence with all of that. And I mean, material selection, any of that stuff, you don't want something to go wrong with a building like this, especially one that's like a focal point downtown that everybody's got their eye on. So to summarize, I was really happy, and we felt very fortunate to not only be involved in this project, but to be able to acquire the building. And I'd love to see this kind of thing happen a lot more often in Saskatchewan. There was another one across the river. So we're in Battleford, and then there's North Battleford across the river. They had a very similar building that was torn down, and that would have been in the 60s to make way for this newer, kind of brutalist looking office building, which they're now currently residing in, and that's Canada Post's location north of the river from us. And there's a lot of buildings, I think, that it's not necessarily poor upkeep, it's just you look over the overall, especially basements and stuff like that, once it starts to get tired and it hasn't been restored and it hasn't been maintained and kept up, I think compounding issues with foundation and building envelope and all that stuff end up in the decision to tear these buildings down. So we were absolutely thrilled to be able to keep the building downtown, and I know everyone in town was too. I can't count the number of times that people have thanked us for bringing this building back. So I'd just love to see more of it. Just like Marvin said, Battleford is a wealth of heritage buildings, and that's part of the reason the building was kept, I think, was because everyone had that mindset of trying to restore these buildings and keep them in place. I mean, it's the second oldest still functioning post office, I think, in the whole country. I mean, and it's been kept up. And I mean, because of that, we were able to take this project on, and it made sense. I mean, if they'd let things deteriorate to the point you see a lot of these other old heritage buildings, it just wouldn't have made fiscal sense. And we would have ended up with some new building, and probably not downtown as well. So I guess that's kind of everything I've got. It was a blast. We love historical buildings. We've done a few other ones in town, and we hope to continue doing as many as we can get our hands on.
That's great. Thanks, Jesse. Yes, it's great to see the post office back in the building and still downtown. A facility like that, like you say, it's such an important anchor for the communities downtown. So the stars certainly aligned when a developer who appreciates heritage buildings and has the necessary abilities just came along at the right time to invest in its rehabilitation. So I know we're getting some comments in the chat that concur with how important it is to the town there that it's still there. Now, I've got a couple of minutes. I know you've got a lot on your plate today, Jesse. Are you able to stay till the end of the hour, or we could take
Absolutely, yeah. You betcha, I will, for sure. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thanks so much. So if anyone has questions for Jesse, we'll just get to them after the next presentation, which is about a building that's connected to Regina's short-lived history as an automobile manufacturing center, and a history that's maybe not that well known, actually. And it's another case of a developer finding value in the redevelopment of a historic building. And so to tell us about that, I'm pleased to introduce Curtis Lax. He's project manager with West Oak, formerly Nicor Group, They're a Regina-based property development and management firm with a sizable portfolio of heritage buildings. So, Curtis, I will turn the proceedings over to you. And I think you may have some other people with you today, so your colleagues, I'll let you introduce them if you'd like, and give you the floor.
Perfect, thank you. I'm here today with Michael Harlos and Alex Tangelo. We'll be working the presentation since me and Michael are not capable of doing so. We are, first, Marvin, can everybody see the screen? Is that?
Yeah, we can see it there, Curtis. It's good.
We are West Oak Investments, formerly known as the Nicor group of companies, and today we're going to be discussing our project at 1260 8th Avenue. It's located in the warehouse district. This 35,000 square foot building, it's located adjacent to the GMC plant. The plant was built in 1928, and this building shortly after, making it nearly a century old. The previous tenant was a manufacturing business also in the auto industry, Cloud Rider Designs. They made automobile accessories, chrome detailing, and relocated to Saskatchewan, leaving this building vacant for a number of years. As the building was used for manufacturing, the majority of all the street front and side windows were all boarded over and stuccoed for energy efficiency for their manufacturing. We purchased this building in 2022 solely for reuse and repurposing. So it's we highlighted it there, the building, the overhead is the square to the left of the larger GMC plant there. And then the next slide here. So this kind of shows a bird's eye view kind of the finished product that we did, showing all of the new windows put all back into the building. We added a rooftop patio to the second floor tenancy, as the building had, back then they were built sufficiently strong enough so it had the structural integrity for us to add that feature, which gives a beautiful view of the 8th Avenue kind of traffic and mornings and evenings going through there. And then you'll also notice that it's on a fairly large parcel of land as well, extending back to where all those trucks are in the north lot there. So historical significance, it's one of the historically significant buildings related to the General Motors plant, located here in Regina. Built in 1928, this building was part of the automobile assembly plant, which was the first of its kind to be established in Western Canada. After the closure of the plant, the company continued to conduct some of its regional office, administrative, and parts distribution operations from this location until it moved in 1967. Its architectural style is consistent with the overall plant design, featuring the Tyndallstone entrance and caps on the roof, and which is also seen on several buildings across Regina from that era. Here's a front picture of the main entrance, kind of showing some of that Tyndallstone entrance and window detailing. The other unique feature of this is it contains one of only 2 sidewalk lift elevators in the province, and possibly the only one that's still operational. Another interesting note is there's a tunnel that actually goes from the adjacent building on the west side, which used to be Signal Industries, that runs all the way across underneath our property and connecting it to the main GM plant. So before I start this, these are a couple of videos of the aforementioned sidewalk lift elevator that I was talking about. When we acquired the building, the lift wasn't operational, but with working with TSASC, we were able to get the lift certified. and operational. These sidewalk elevators were common in large cities like New York for the reception of larger deliveries, and actually still some use them in New York. If you're downtown, you'll see them in front of the Prada store and Barnes and Noble. The video on the left is actually one at the Barnes and Noble, and the video on the right is of ours now operational. So some of the important things, like Jesse was talking about earlier, is the diligence kind of when going into a project like this on a historic building, the period just prior to acquisition, making sure that it's obviously a worthwhile investment. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike to talk about some of these key repurposing factors and cost drivers that you kind of need to thoroughly investigate before starting a project like this, just to make sure you don't run into some nightmares once you start uncovering things in these older historic buildings.
Yeah, the main thing is knowing what you're getting into, and I'm sure Jesse can speak to that as well with what he's undertaken. That was a beautiful building, and congratulations to your team there. But yeah, things in your testing, you want to know what you're into structural wise, roof wise, underground sewer and water is a big factor with something of this age. Our building had all underground cast plumbing, and something to realize with cast plumbing is in a vacant building, if it's been vacant for any length of time, cast can deteriorate very, very quickly. We have some pictures of that, so you'll kind of see what we had to do with this building. It has all new underground plumbing all the way to the street. Structure wise, typically, an older building, pretty stout, come with a pretty stout structure, concrete. This floor slab is 8 inches thick throughout. One of the nice features of something built back in the day when concrete was cheaper than dirt. So yeah, just completeness of budget when you're building your performance, knowing what you're getting into, and good coordination with city officials and consultants. We were lucky. We used Alton Tangelo, experienced architect, with his team was very helpful, liaisoning with the city, bringing inspectors and whatnot in before we got going to make sure, when we went into development and building permit stages, that everybody was on the same page. So one of the attractive features of this property was it came with a large parcel, approximately 3/4 of an acre at the back, and vacant land, had some built-in revenue with tenant auto dealers is leasing the back area, but could be used to build a future building on. So when we knew if we could make sense of the existing building, we would basically have some free land at the back that we would help out that performer down the road when we go to put something on there. One of the challenges with nowadays building of this size, 35,000 square feet, typically a warehouse or industrial user will want 20 to 30 foot ceiling height. We're limited to a 14-foot ceiling height here with this building. So 100 years ago, tenant like that was probably a dime a dozen, not so much nowadays. So we knew we would have to demise the space and come up with a whole new plan, basically reinventing the wheel. We did want to maintain as much as the original structure and look of the building as we could. And I think we did a pretty good job of that while still giving the building some modern features.
So with some of the challenges we faced, like Michael mentioned, with the ceiling height, for a large tenant looking for that space. So demising it down into smaller obviously was a key in our business case to go forward with this project. Some of the other challenges, like we mentioned, is the infrastructure. So the cast piping, both for the sewer and the roof storms, had all deteriorated. So getting to kind of investigate that early on in the project, just to explore costs and know kind of what we were getting into for most of that. Obviously tearing up 150 something lineal feet of floor for piping and such. Knowing too that we were going to enhance this historic building into new spaces with all new electrical and efficiency, basically modernizing the interior without kind of affecting much structurally on anything was important and also challenging. And then obviously new HVAC and plumbing, the heating and boiler decommissioning.
Yeah, going from one tenant to five, the building came with a single source heat supply with a boiler. Problem with that is where do you put the thermostat? So we eliminated the boiler, decommissioned it, and put a new heating system in each bay, and as well as new electrical. So it's all separately metered, making it a lot easier for property management.
And here some photographs on the right, just of the highlights of this repurposing. So with all the former windows kind of boarded or stuccoed up, by putting all the glass back in this building, it was almost an overnight change. And obviously we were getting comments right immediately after we had done this. It just kind of put life right back into this building. And then obviously on the meat and potatoes side of it, having the comfort of your new storm and sewers, your upgraded electrical, just for future tenancies is obviously reassuring to all the new lease tenants. The other challenge or thing that we did was the creating accessible entrances for all of the new tenants. So on the main floor, we added for the second story tenant, we added a new elevator as well, so to create accessibility for the second floor, as well as converting the east parking lot into a new commercial asphalt parking lot and getting accessible entrances into on that side of the building for everybody. So at the end of it, we got a real kind of modernized building with still a historic feel throughout. Here are a couple of pictures of the main front entrance of the building. You can see the old terrazzo floor, which we brought back to life, and the kind of the grand terrazzo staircase that ran upstairs. So it was important to kind of keep that, and we obviously, you can kind of see the amount of, we plywooded every single stair all the way up for the amount of construction that and materials and just deliveries going up and down through there, since that was the main point of entry for the construction of this project. And then as well, you can see some of the new code stuff, such as the handrail, which needed to be figured out and added to the original design of this building. Here again are some before and after pictures. This is of one of the main floor tenants that has the 8th Street frontage. This shows on the left kind of the dark gloomy of when we first got in here. This is when we originally ripped up the entire floor for the new sewer drains. You can kind of see some of the older windows and panels that were put in, and then the ceiling before it was completely fire rated for the 2nd floor tenant. And then on the right, you can kind of see the after product of the front 8,000 square feet on the main floor, which is a fitness and leisure business. And this is kind of their showroom and throughout.
So this is a prime example of how important due diligence is. It would be a shame to have all this work done on the right to find out that your underground sewer you have a problem with, and end up having to make that look like the picture on the left after you've done all that. So again, you can't reiterate enough how important it is to know what you're getting into.
In this next video, the 2nd floor tenant, fortunate for us, is a marketing design firm that ended up moving in there. And in this video, you'll see down the left halls there, this is the original metal walls throughout. And the craftsmanship just on these metal walls was pretty incredible. It had a real like Dick Tracy private investigator type feel in all of the old offices from the GM days. And we created one wall, a newer wall, to kind of replicate that, but also worked with the architect and design to keep that those walls and trying to reincorporate that into their new space. So this video they put together and kind of shows you the before and after of all the different spaces on the throughout the 2nd floor. Yeah, so there, you can kind of see this project to date. I think we're on about month 16, 18 of it. It's now has full tenancy throughout, and we're just finishing up probably over the next month, just the last couple of final touches to most of all the project on there. And that's 1260 8th Avenue.
Well, thank you, Curtis and team. What a fine building and such an important connection to Regina's industrial heritage. And now with West Oak's investment, it's good to know that it's going to see a lot more years of service. So we do have time for Jesse and Curtis to take some questions. If you'd like to ask a question, just if you could raise your hand using the hand icon there on your screen, and we'll call on you, or type them into the chat. Just getting a lot of compliments on the work done on both of those projects. It was mentioned that when you're doing a historic building rehabilitation, you expect the unexpected, I guess. You encounter things that might not have known were there. And along those lines, someone has asked about the North Battleford, the Battleford Post Office. What happened to the bat colony? That sounds like it might have been an unexpected feature of the building.
Well, there was quite an extensive bat colony in it. I think when Pynchon did their environmental assessment, they said there was around 45 to 50 of them living in there. So they removed the majority of them, but a big issue was the building envelope. So the reason they had a bat colony of that size was there was all kinds of different breaches in the exterior, not so much in bricks, but more in areas where you'd have penetrations, say like for a window opening, or areas where you'd have counter flashings. There was some problems that way that hadn't been addressed, and we spent the better part of 2 weeks auditing the building envelope and addressing those issues. So you'd have, say around a window opening, masonry incomplete or missing mortar, stuff like that. I mean, the building's coming on 114 years old, so that stuff's bound to happen. You get deterioration in mortar joints, you get deterioration in openings, everything moves over time. And then especially the counter flashings, like, and then also the clock itself, it would be the south face of the clock had a 3/4 inch gap all the way around the side. I don't know if you know anything about bats. They can fit through a 3/8 by 3/8. So basically just over a centimeter by centimeter hole a bat can fit into. So that was a big part of it. The whole bats in the belfry saying definitely has merit, because that's where the majority of them were spending their time. They find their way in, and then they kind of make a colony, and over time they establish that as their home, just because they can live to be. The big brown bat is the type that we mostly see in Saskatchewan, especially around the Battlefords. And once they've made their home somewhere, they have a 25-year lifespan. They leave their scent in the building, and then other bats or bats from that colony will continually try and gain access and egress from the building. So once you plug the holes, you kind of prevent them from coming back in, and if you missed one, because they'll be back in there again. And we used bat exclusion devices always, because you don't want to plug a hole and then have the bat die inside the building. What you want to do is find the breach and either plug it in the middle of the night when they're active, because they're nocturnal, or plug it and then put a bat exclusion device, which is basically a device that allows the bat egress but not access back into the building. So once the bats get out, they can't get back in that same way. And through the process of elimination, we found those holes and dealt with those breaches. And at this point, we haven't had an issue. I have seen them come back in. We had one come in, I think, through the lobby doors last year. Other than that, there hasn't been any problems. So it was an ongoing labor, but I mean, I think we've achieved a solution.
And we can all hope they found a nice, comfortable new home somewhere.
100%. Yeah, there's plenty of other historical buildings.
Okay, well, expect the unexpected for sure. Royce, I see you have your hand up. Do you want to turn on your mic and ask your question?
Sure. Thanks, Marvin. Just two questions for Jesse. The staircase woodwork that you took out of the post office, is that still being stored in the building, or?
No, I've stored it off-site. So everything that we took out, the balustrades, spindles, all that stuff, all got wrapped up individually and numbered. We even kept the wafers from in between where the balustrade ties into the shoe down below. But we still have all those components. As I said earlier, before we did any of the removal or dissection of the material, there was humidifiers running in the building. We got everything up to 65, 70%, so we didn't have any splits. And then every newel, every piece of the balustrade, handrail, spindles, that's all been wrapped up, numbered, saved, and stored away. So we still have all those components.
Cool. Then the second question is, maybe I missed it in your presentation, but what are the plans for the upper levels of the building?
We'd like to further develop. One of the issues, though, that we're having is parking. So we need to find a solution for that. What I'd like to do is probably find some sort of a commercial tenant for the second floor. There's about 2,600 square feet, tons of glass. It's a very, very nice, expansive looking second floor. It's got a large kind of bathroom that could be split, so you'd have male and female, and there's still a size where you could do barrier-free access for wheelchair access and whatnot. So it would be either find a tenant that would take over that whole floor, or find multiple tenants and maybe turn it into a business center. For me, whatever benefits the downtown is the way we'd like to go with it. We have a great anchor tenant already that more than covers our expenses. And I mean, they're triple net. They have a large occupied area of their leasehold. So it's not anything we're rushing into. But so the second floor, I'd like to see commercial. The third floor would be nice to see like an executive suite. Somebody could, it's 1,600 square feet. It has 2 large bedrooms. It has a really large living room area. And then, I mean, it has a big kitchen. It's awesome. 9-foot ceilings. And then the visuals from the different window, I guess, viewpoints are phenomenal. Like, you can see all the other old historic buildings downtown. You can see the valley. You have a commanding view. Part of the tenant on the third floor's, I guess, lease agreement, though, would include clock maintenance. Someone would need access, because that clock, once it's up and running, it needs to be wound about every 6 to 7 days, and it needs to be oiled, and it needs to be, it needs a close eye kept on it. So that's another big part of the third floor. So it's kind of whatever's best for downtown is what we want to do with it. We already have a great tenant. They're not going anywhere. So that's one of those things I'd like to see evolve. But parking is kind of an issue downtown as it is. So once we can come up with a solution for that, then we're going to develop further.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, Jesse. Those kinds of zoning challenges can definitely affect the viability of a restoration or a rehabilitation like that. So hopefully you can reach some sort of solution or accommodation on that.
Yes.
We have a couple more hands up and some things in the chat. Maybe jump to the chat for one here. Bruce is saying it was great presentations by both groups, and a question for you both. You spent time conserving historic features. Have you found that the presence of those features helps with your marketing and leasing of the buildings? Curtis, do you want to go first on that one?
Sure, yeah. I think it depends. Sometimes, like, I know the tenant in the on the main floor space that we were showing there, and it was we should have added one of the photos in their kind of hot tub display room. Like, there was an old brick wall in there which used to be the kitchen staff room, and we actually ended up sandblasting that wall out to give the old brick look, authentic look. And so on that note, there are some things with the features of the older buildings and the bones on those that was what attracted them to that space. The kind of the columns, the brick, the older warehouse feel just fit really well with them. So I think there are, depending on the tenant, if you find the right tenant, there are some things that will help market and lease those. And then what was the other part of the question there? The other one for this too is just like historic buildings typically also are in great locations. So that was kind of the other thing that really helped the marketing and leasing of that building, is the actual spot itself too. I don't know, Mike, if you have any other comments on that?
Well, without question, when you take a building that's zoned heavy industrial and want to try and put a retail tenant in there, that building needs to look really, really good. And I think we nailed that. Like that, the first time we had the tenant through there trying to entice them to lease on the main floor, they were interested and thought, well, maybe this could look good, but no, you know what, I think we'll pass. We put all the windows in, we demoed the interior, put all the windows in, brought them back, and they were immediately in love and said they'd take it. So the revitalization, definitely had, and the historic look and feel definitely had helped with the leasing. And then again, on the second floor, office tenant, keeping that interior, like Curtis said, some of those original walls, office walls, was paramount to them taking it too. So it was a challenge, to say the least, to retrofit that, because you know, we added some walls that to match up with what was there. But yeah, at the end of the day, it was definitely worth it.
For our part of it, the tenant's concern was more having a modern leasehold. So a lot of the restoration work that we did was after clearing with them that we didn't want suspended ceiling back in that area. I mean, you have original plaster ceiling throughout that's absolutely glorious. All the trim and stuff you could see in a lot of those pictures, that plaster trim, which is kind of integral to the corners and the original plasterwork surfaces as it was, that was all covered up before. So we exposed that and brought it back to life. And for Canada Post, it wasn't really a concern so much that we retain that historical integrity. It was just that they have a leasehold that was modernized. Our aspect and angle on it was to keep it historical so that it's becoming of the community we live in. And everybody really appreciated that. And I know for tenants for the second or third floor, or for the coffee shop that we'd like to do alongside, that's going to be a good anchor point and attraction for them, I know for sure. And I mean, it already kind of fits in with the theme of what our town is like right now. It's historic Battleford. I mean, everybody knows the courthouse, the town hall, the post office, Fred Light Museum. Those are all original buildings, or darn near original, that have been with the town for generations. So it fits in with that whole historical motif. And I know that everyone appreciates it. And we were more than happy to put in the extra work and labor to restore those elements of the building.
Okay, thank you. Roger has his hand up. Roger, do you want to unmute for your question?
I do. Thanks, Marvin. I'm just calling in from Victoria in British Columbia. Just a couple of general questions for either group. I guess being in Saskatchewan, there's not much, if anything, in the way of seismic requirements. Did you have to introduce any structural steel to any of the buildings when you were doing your work?
I guess we will go first. Yeah, we did have to add a little bit when we built a rooftop patio for our second floor tenant. It didn't require a lot. The building was, very well built. From day one. So, and maintained well. So we did have to add a few columns and purlins for that new structure to be able to hold people. But other than that, I guess structure wise, we brought the elevator right to the ground level when we added that. So there was a little bit of grade beadwork, concrete wise, building a pit with the stairwell for that. But no, as far as any major structural work, it was mainly for features we were adding. We didn't have to redo anything.
Mm-hmm. And I may have missed at the introduction of both of your, well, certainly for Jesse's introduction, I missed the first few minutes of that. But were these buildings heritage designated? Did you have to go through Heritage Advisory Design Panel or get any heritage alteration permits, or were you just in for building permits on these?
Just building permits for our part.
Yeah, okay. So our building is not on heritage protected. It's important to us to maintain the heritage feel and aspect of what it was like. This is part of the GM plant, which is a pretty significant part of Regina's history. And with the fire in 17 to the actual plant, it's likely just a matter of time before that ends up being completely taken down. So the office building, this building, which was parts, and then the building beside us to the west, which was actually called the Picklington Glass Factory. That it was the Signal Industries building. They built all the windshields of that for the GM plant, and they're actually still. That company still exists today in Europe. So,
and just one last question on the GM plant. And one of the photos you showed, I think it was the south elevation. It looks like you put in dark tinted glass. Was that just the photo, or did you actually use dark tinted glass in the building?
Yeah, it is tinted glass. Yeah.
Was that by choice or for because you were south facing, or?
Yeah, south facing, like practicality. The the tenants wanted it, when Alton did some renderings, he showed tinted glass, looked absolutely amazing. We fell in love with it, and that's kind of how that went. That was when we showed that to the upper brass and the people who were paying for it. That was a must-have. Everybody. It was a unanimous decision to go that route.
Okay. All right. Thanks to both. Projects look really interesting. Nice work. Thanks, Marvin.
Hey, I'm not seeing any other questions right now. You guys have probably been noticing in the chat, there's a lot of kudos being given to both projects and appreciation for the work you did on those buildings, saving that heritage. That's really great to see. Maybe just in the last minute here, I'll comment on one thing about Jesse's comment or project that really struck me, in that it strikes me as having elements of a public-private partnership approach to development, in which a public agency sells a heritage building to a private developer who upgrades it to a serviceable standard, and then the agency provides the developer with an income stream by leasing it back. I think that sort of describes, Jesse, your model for that one.
Yeah, very well.
This has been a successful model for rehabilitating historic buildings in other places, but it's really not much seen, or almost never seen, I think you could say, in Saskatchewan. So just, it would be good to see in the future that public and private sector players look for those kinds of opportunities.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. No, it worked out great for both parties. Canada Post is back in the nice new space, and they don't have to worry about a lot of the maintenance aspects of it. And we have a wonderful tenant.
Well, that's great. It's good to hear a success story like that. So that concludes today's program, and it does bring us to the end of this year's webinar. So thank you again to our presenters. We certainly couldn't do these webinars without you generously giving your time to be with us and share the stories of your great projects. And thank you too to all the guests who came out. We appreciate your interest in the webinars, and we hope you enjoyed them. So bye for now.
Thanks, Marvin. Thanks, everybody.